not practical that he could actually fend them off for so much time. So he goes quickly, and so it was tough. It went a number of versions of editing and fine tuning it.
So how do you guide an audience through a fight scene where a single guy takes on an entire mob of people? How do you possibly ground it in any kind of believability, and how do you make it exciting without becoming overwhelming? Well, that's exactly what R does in this early scene where we're introduced to the character of Raju. And it's all thanks to how the editing builds rhythm, structure, and changes in perspective that work to guide the audience through the sequence. So welcome to Aversive Films, and let's take a look at R. Now this scene does a lot, and it does it with relatively little dialogue. Character and storytelling is shown through action, and it's the editing and shot choices that play a huge role in fleshing out the character. Now what's really important to note here is the structure and rhythm the editor A. Shrikar Prasad builds.
We try to edit that, see that, and then actually go to the final shoot so that you get the rhythm and the length right.
The whole scene is constructed in specific beats, specific mini arcs that each build tension, reach a crescendo, and naturally guide the viewer to the next one. So looking at the very start, we get establishing shots, and the edit itself is pretty fast. This quick editing, where even quieter moments are interrupted by the chaos, immediately builds the overwhelming and chaotic force that the character has to face. Most of these are wide shots with loud diegetic sound, and it keeps building the threat until we get to this. This is the first close-up of the scene and the first shot to really use slow motion. And that's a common technique the scene and the film as a whole uses a lot. Slow-mo is often made to emphasize certain aspects of a moment or ground the scene in a specific character's perspective. By breaking the flow of the sequence with this close-up and slow-mo shot, it immediately brings attention to the character and the kind of intensity he's going to bring. And the film structures a lot of its editing around this idea. It has faster edited scenes that eventually crescendo into slow-mo that emphasizes something and brings the audience into the new aspect of a scene. For a better example of this, let's look at what happens just a few moments later. The rhythm of the scene builds and builds with the faster music and faster edits until it ultimately crescendos with this. The music stops, the shot turns to slow-mo, and it brings the audience into a new part of the sequence. By doing this, they make the scenes intense and fast-paced, but slow down at key moments to break rhythm and emphasize something that leads the viewer into a new story beat. And that's absolutely crucial, especially for a film like this, where the action can be so over the top and so overwhelming. Without grounding it in any kind of structure or rhythm, it all just becomes noise. But another thing the edit has to do is ground the scene not just in structure, but in the actual believability of the sequence.
Somewhere there is a sense of realism in what he's trying to portray, though it's much larger than life. Here, the challenge was for the director, or during the edit, was that we keep the violence, you get a sense of him being trapped inside that violence.
Now this movie has some ridiculously over-the-top action that breaks the very idea of physics. And while it's awesome, without any kind of grounding, it feels weightless. Fortunately, the film does ground it, and it does this with the strong use of objective and subjective perspectives. Objective shots highlight the absurd and massive scale of the scenes, and the subjective shots constantly build a momentum that makes it somewhat believable. Like in this part where Raju finally faces the mob, we get subjective shots like this that help highlight the natural way the scene could happen, but we also get objective shots that serve to show the scale and insanity of it. The whole sequence uses this, and this moment in particular is probably my favorite. Raju doesn't feel invincible, and it's because of these subjective shots where we see each part of what he's doing to achieve his goal. They cause the scene to move in a way where you're not actively questioning the logistics of what's happening. So when we get objective shots like this, it feels fueled by something that's natural. Spatial awareness and eye tracking also play a huge role in this. The scene constantly uses Raju's eyes to guide cuts and geography, which helps us to better understand the character at each step of the sequence. And the spatial awareness of the scene makes each step feel all the more natural. For example, we see this right outside the fence at the start, and we see it come back later to actually impact the action. And as the scene comes to an end, after the sheer chaos of what we just went through, we slow down completely. We get a moment to breathe before coming back to this. And ultimately ending with the same shot that introduced us to the character in the first place.